I did an interview yesterday on this cable vision channel, and this young man, he said to me, he's a young kid right out of school, and he said to me, I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. I'm going to make you sweat. So I was just sitting there. He said, he started asking me things like, why should I buy your book? You know, and I said, I don't really care if you do. I just wrote it, and if it's out there, and if you want to get it, fine, and if you don't, that's fine with me too. And he said, well, how is your book different from anybody else's book, and what makes it better? And what do you say to all of the people out there who say that you're just peddling, positiveness and trying to make other people feel good and you're making money off of that? I said, they may be right. I said, he said, that's what you tell them? I said, yeah. And then when we were off camera and we were walking out, he was a very nice young man. He said, boy, you just skirted right away from all of those tough questions. And I said, no, there's no such thing as a tough question when you are what Maslow called independent of the good opinion of other people. When you are beyond the need to be approved of, when you are beyond the need to have somebody else think that you're terrific, when you have slain your ego just a little bit. And believe me, I work on this hard, all right? And I'm just scratching the surface on it, all right? But as I get better and better at it, I find, in the Course in Miracle it says, if you knew, and underline knew as know, all right? If you knew who walks beside you at all times, you would never experience fear again. If you really knew that all the things that Deepak and I had talked about this afternoon, that this universal intelligence is there, that the universe will handle the details, that it's all perfect, that it's in order, if you really knew that, and weren't consumed with anything else related to your ego, you would be so free. It's like somebody would come up to you and call you a jerk, and you'd say, you got a good point there. And someone else would think that they didn't like the way you said that. You say, that's fine. And you're looking at two people, and many of your questions ask that. You're looking at two people who get a lot of criticism from our professional organizations, from people out there, from colleagues, from people who are disaffected with that, from fundamentalists, from it's all over the place. And it's like when you talked about those three things about purpose. When you know you're on purpose, it's like that old Chinese proverb, that the taller the tree, the harder the wind blows. The more you get up, the more wind you're going to see coming your way, and you just sort of let it go. It gets very peaceful.
There are certain features that distinguish these people that I'd like to define for our audience.
Sure, do it.
The first one is that their internal reference point is not their ego, it's not their image, but it's their immortal spirit, which is without beginning and without end. The second is their internal dialogue is not, as Wayne was saying, what's in it for me? Their internal dialogue is, how can I help? The third is,
that's a great mantra, by the way. How may I serve? How may I serve?
How can I help? Because if that's dharma, if I can help, then everything that I do out there, give out there, it comes to me, back to me.
Yeah.
The third characteristic is that there is wisdom and security in insecurity. That one should factor in that life is, by definition, uncertain. And it's a miracle that sometimes in that field of uncertainty we introduce an intention and magically appears. But if we relinquish our attachment to all the time want things to be in a certain way instead of how they actually are, then that's struggle. There's an expression I heard a long time ago, I don't even remember who said it. The person said,
probably me.
Yeah, probably. Maybe it is. When things don't seem to go my way, I let go of my idea of how they should be, trusting that I do not know the picture, the total picture. Because if I knew it, I'd know it's okay. So that is the wisdom of insecurity, the wisdom of uncertainty. And then, of course, the behavior of people who experience timelessness, it's spontaneous, never in anticipation of a response, never for approval, never the need to control. External goals go away, internal goals become much more important. Material goals are important, but they should not dominate our internal goals, which are the need to love, the need to be loved, the need to acquire wisdom, the need to discover our spiritual identity. And then finally, as I said, it is that there is loss of fear of change. Because all fear that exists is the fear of mortality in disguise. It's the fear of change. Get in touch with that part of yourself which is beyond change, and then there is no fear.
It seems to me that fear would disappear in our lives completely if we knew that that divine omnipotence that flows through everything flows through us. If we really knew that and had that awareness and lived with it, that then there's always, of course, the issue of do you just walk through life and not worry about anything, not be consumed with anything, because everything is just all handled for you and just taken care of, or do you, as Jung put it, he said that's an enormous paradox that they talk about in the Gita, that's cleaving the opposites. He put it this way, he said, all of you, at the same moment that you are protagonists in your own life, making choices, at the same instant, you are also spear carriers, or the extras, in a much larger drama. In fact, he said, and he studied this for a lifetime, he said, you are doomed to make choices. So you've got to live with both of those opposites, and when you sort of cleave that opposite, you get very peaceful and you get purposeful, and it doesn't mean that you're resigned and say, oh, there's starvation in the world, so I won't be concerned about it. What you do is you don't get attached to it, and you don't tell yourself that it shouldn't be happening, and you say, yes, indeed, it must be a part of the divine plan, but so at the same instant is my desire to end it. So both of those are existing. So that's what you go with, your desire to end it. And you don't become one more part of the problem where you're just judging it.
It's about practicing this idea of not putting your thoughts on what is missing and shifting it to it's on its way. It's on its way. It's on its way. 4 words, just get them tattooed someplace inside of you. Whatever it is that you would like to attract into your life, know that it's on its way. And I want to say to you that as you begin to get your thoughts more harmonized with Tao thinking, that is, with the thinking of the source, the thinking of God, that which always has been, that which does nothing but leaves nothing undone, as you begin to more and more harmonize in this way, what happens is that you start elevating your thoughts so that the habit of how you think becomes more harmonized. Rather than a polarity with what you want to attract, it becomes harmonized with it, and it becomes your natural way of how you think all the time. And you start then beginning to teach your children the same way of thinking. So you just catch them when they start saying things like, oh, with my luck it won't work out. Why have any of us ever learned to say, with my luck, and having it mean things aren't going to work out? Why wouldn't you say, and just have it as your habit, with my luck, it'll probably show up faster than it normally does? Why not have that kind of a way? Because here's what happens. As you begin to shift the way that you think and have an anticipation that this thing is going to work out for you, you can only act upon your thoughts. And as you get these higher and higher thoughts, what happens is that the thought is now more aligned with what it is you want to attract, and then you start acting upon that thought. And as you start acting upon the thought that it will work out, that it's probably on its way, you start to see how this whole system all works. In other words, call it the universe, whatever you want, begins to conspire with you. It begins to act almost where you suddenly become a collaborator with fate. And instead of fate being something that just might or might not happen to you, you're in collaboration with what it is that you want to attract. I mean, ask any physician, there's physicians here today, ask them about something called the will to live. Ask them about somebody who's going in for a corneal transplant and thinks that I'm going to see when this thing is done, rather than someone who thinks it probably won't work out. And which one would they rather work with? What is this thing called the will to live? What is this thing, this inner kind of thing that says, I refuse to allow myself to think And they've done research on this, in studies on gerontology, where what does your life look like from 60 plus versus what does your life look like below from 60 down to into your 20s? That people who live a dynamic life into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, people who feel strong, who don't feel that getting older means that I have to in any way decline any place, physically or mentally. Getting older has nothing to do with the concept of declining. That when people are in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and this is their perception of what their life is going to be like when they are in their 60s, that those people have a much greater chance of not attracting the kinds of diseases that are so much age-related as do people who think of old as infirm and declining throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. That you change the way you believe about that and you say declining is not a possibility. And we can create the kind of world that we want to create when enough of us begin to say, not part of my consciousness. Nope, I don't buy gossip. No, I don't buy violence. No, I don't have anything to do with that. And you just turn the channel, you turn it off. I pick up a Time magazine when I get on a flight and I go through and I say, I won't read the stories that involve killing. I won't read this. I don't need to hear any more about any more people blowing themselves up. I don't need to continue to have that as a part of my consciousness because I want to be someone who radiates out God-realized thinking. That's what I want to do. And I can't do that if I'm constantly being imbued with that. So I just go through the pages, page. And usually I say, oh, just threw away another $4.95. There's nothing in it to read. Every once in a while, good story about maybe Tiger Woods or something. But by and large, there's not much in there. And you don't have to fill yourself with that kind of energy.
But you gotta change your awareness of yourself, as Maslow said. And one of the ways that you change your awareness of yourself is to understand a very simple premise. Think of an apple pie. Here's an apple pie, and this apple pie, you take this apple pie and you take a slice of this apple pie and you put it over here. And then you walk over to the slice and you say to the apple pie, the slice of apple pie, what are you like? What are you like? And the little slice of apple pie says, I must be like what I came from. You wouldn't expect it to be pineapple. You wouldn't expect it to be cherry. You would expect it to be like what it came from, right? So why is it that we understand this, and yet we don't understand that we too must be like what we came from? We are pieces of God. We came from a divine source. We have to trust in our divinity. We have to understand that we are not this package of bones and skin encapsulating, these internal organs, that's not who we are. That's what we call the false self. It's an illusion. That who we really are is what we came from. And what we came from is eternal, it's infinite, it's kind, it's unlimited, it excludes no one. So that if we understand that we are really here as spiritual beings, just having a human experience, not the other way around. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience, it's the other way around. Our essence is our greatness, what we came from. We must be like what we came from. I've just taken up this new practice. It's called yoga. Now, I'm 65 years old, and I've decided that there are certain things that I was told that I couldn't do at earlier stages of my life that I've decided I'm taking on. I don't care what my age is or what anybody else has told. What Mrs. McConnell told me in the 6th grade at Marquette Elementary School in Detroit, that you don't have to come to art class. It's really not for you. You can go dribble basketballs maybe, but you don't want to come to art. This is because she saw some of my stick drawings that I was pretty proud of. And then there was Mr. Tubbs at Denby High School in Detroit, who, when I turned in my first drawing in
drafting class. I didn't even know what drafting was. When I just signed, they threw me in there because the school was so overcrowded. It was my elective. And I turned in my first drawing, and he asked me the question, "Do you have a little sister?" Like in the 3rd grade, because she perhaps is the one that did this way. That was my whole view of my artistic ability. I'm out there painting now. I'm doing painting. And I'm also doing yoga, all right? And I've learned some things about myself in the process of doing this. It was like a change in attitude, a shift, a belief system that I no longer was hanging on to. And that's what we have to do. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your beliefs have been. It doesn't matter what other people have tried to convince you of in the past. When you move into spirit and have a knowing that I have the capacity to be able to do this, you leave behind the false self. And the false self is really nothing more than this ego. Look, you came from a divine place that is unlimited, that says you can be anything you put your attention on. And then you bought into a whole series of beliefs that were handed to you by very well-meaning people attempting to convince you that you had limitations, that you couldn't do this, that this wasn't possible. And I'd like to suggest to you that you took on something called an ego. E-G-O. An ego. You came in from divinity, you came in from a place of unlimited, you show up and you edged God out. E-G-O. And when you edge God out, it doesn't mean that you're sacrilegious, it doesn't mean that you're not a moral person. It means that you take on a belief system that says, who I am is no longer this infinite divine being who can step outside and observe this body and believe that he can make it do whatever I put my attention on and use it to have the same powers that is spoken about in the New Testament. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. It's within each and every one of us, except that we bought into an idea that who we are is what we have, who we are is what we do, who we are is what other people think I am, who I am is separate from everybody else, who I am is separate from what I would like to attract into my life, and who I am is separate from my source. And we believe in this separation, and we believe in this identity that who I am is what I have. So we start accumulating. We accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. The problem is that when you stop accumulating, and if who you are is what you accumulate, then you have no value as soon as your things start to disappear, as soon as they wear out, as soon as somebody else takes them, as soon as the government taxes them, as soon as any number of things. Who I am is what I do. If you no longer can do, then you aren't. You no longer exist. Who I am is my reputation, and we raise our children often to believe that what's most important is what other people think of you. Fit in. Do what you've been told to do. Do what the crowd does. Follow the herd. And you know what happens, what you step in when you follow the herd. So we take on all of these sort of false ideas, and we have a tendency to believe them. And inspiration is moving back into spirit. And it's moving back into spirit in such a way that you no longer accept yourself as anything other than divine. In the Tao it says, there's a time for everything, and everything in its time. There's a time for everything. Listen to this. There's a time for being ahead, and a time for being at peace. There's a time for being in motion, and a time for being at rest. There's a time for being vigorous, and a time for being exhausted. And in the Bible, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under the sun. I practice, this was so helpful to me, particularly as I do my yoga practice. And in my yoga practice, it's, there are some very exhausting postures. I do this Bikram hot yoga, all right, so it's 105 or between 105 and 110 for 90 minutes. And there's one that I used to hate. It's called triangle. I started practicing what the Tao teaches, and I remembered there's a time for being exhausted. There's a time for that. And as I practiced that, I said, and there's a time for being at rest. And it's coming. Hopefully soon. But in your life, In your life, there's an awareness that there is a time for all the things that go on that you think shouldn't be happening. In the Tao, it says that hidden in all misfortune is good fortune. Hidden in the misfortune that you have is good fortune, because no storm can last forever. Even nature cannot create a storm that lasts forever. Ultimately, hidden within every storm is calmness. Hidden within every flood is drought and dryness. Hidden within all of the storms of your life is the peace that you desire. And it leans on you if you stop telling yourself and just let yourself go with it, to be at harmony with it, rather than trying. You can see why this is called the wisest book ever written, and we're just touching on it here, just touching on this. Lao Tzu was green before Al Gore. He was. This is verse 39 of the Tao Te Ching. When man interferes with the Tao, the sky becomes filthy, the earth becomes depleted, the equilibrium crumbles, creatures become extinct, therefore nobility is rooted in humility. Do you know that every one of your children have the anchor of the universe located within them? And that Khalil Gibran, this is a paraphrase, he said, your children are not your children. They are the products of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not for you. They're not there for you. So what are you doing interfering in their lives? Now, I'm not talking about letting them play out in the traffic or play at the edge of a swimming pool if they don't know how to swim. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I called this when I was working on this and living this and practicing this for that full year of 2006, the bite your tongue, zip your lip verses of the Tao. We have parents, I see them a lot, they're called helicopter parents. Because they're always hovering. They're hovering over their kids and they're telling them what to do and what not to do. And my son came over from England, my son Shane, and he was going to get ready to go to college, in America. And my wife said to me, so you're going to take him and show him about registration, right? I said, oh yeah, I'll be doing that. She said, well, make sure that you help him because he doesn't have any idea how to register at the school, this great big school with thousands of people. I said, yeah, and I do, right? I would know how to register kids at school, you know. And so Shane got in the car and I said, it's all going to be fine. It'll all be fine. And we drive over to the campus and I drop him off and I have my tennis racket in the back. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm a prophet. I said, I get paid by the thought. And I have a tennis match, and then I have to walk on the beach so that I get paid by the thought. He said, but what about the registration? I said, well, the registration, I said, you'll do a lot like I did when I learned to register. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you'll just go up to the people and say, where is registration? And they'll say, it's over there where all of those people are all lined up. Because I remember those days in a college of 40,000 students or so, finding out how to register. Tracy, did I take you to register, honey? No. So he said, you mean you're just going? I said, yeah, you just go with it. I said, you want daddy to walk with you over and take you through graduate? You're 18 years old and you want daddy to register you? He said, oh, no, I wouldn't want that. So we got home at the end of the evening, when I got back home, and my wife had said to me, she said, did you help Shane at registration? Oh, I said, I gave him so much help. Probably the most help he ever had in his life. I taught him how to do things for himself. And so that I wouldn't have to be interfering and hovering over and figuring it all out for them. My children know that when their science project comes up, that I'm there for consultation, but I passed science. I got through that myself. And you'll be doing your own science project. If I can help you, I'd be happy to help you, but I'm not going to be getting the glue and figuring out how to make a time clock and all of that. I said, you know, just look at a clock. That's how you tell time for me, whatever it might be. And it's not an uncaring and it's not a callous attitude at all. It's an awareness that your children have the anchor of the universe located within them. That's what Lao Tzu said.
whenever I speak, I always repeat an affirmation from A Course in Miracles. And this affirmation goes like this. It says, if you knew, it doesn't say if you believed, it says if you knew, a knowing means an absence of doubt, if you knew who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again. And I remind myself of that as I take the microphone. And if I'm going to speak for a weekend or 20 minutes or anything in between, I always remind myself that I'm not alone, that I am connected to something that I am a part of. And it doesn't matter what you call it. As Alan Watts said, you can't get wet from the word water. Whether you call it water or aqua or anything in between, Bazer. It's not what you call it that will make you wet. It's the substance of it. So whether you call this God or soul or spirit or consciousness is of no consequence. And it's shifting into that knowing. I've often said that when Jesus would approach a leper, he wouldn't go up to the leper and say, you know, we haven't been having a whole lot of success here with leprosy lately. It's really running rampant here. There are noses falling off, there are fingers in the ditch. This is not a pleasant sight. But I've got some advice, and I've got some herbs. And if you listen to my advice and you take these herbs, you have a 30% chance of surviving over the next 5 years. He would never say that. He said, walk. You are healed. Rise. And healing would take place. And even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. And it's a very intriguing kind of idea. This notion of being in a state of mind in which you can have a knowing that is so profound that doubt can never enter into it. Now you have this knowing. I remember when I first read the works of the Buddha, he said the first and most significant thing for any of us to know is to come to know something that cannot be destroyed by death. The most important thing that you can learn in your life, said the Buddha, is to come to know something that cannot be destroyed by death. Jung put it this way. He said the telling question of your life is your relationship to the infinite. If you have one, you are on a path of higher awareness. If you don't, you're not. Do you have a sense of the infinite? When Lao Tzu was asked the question, what is real, Master? What is real? By his devotees and students. And Lao Tzu in the 6th century before Christ in China was considered to be God in a human form. He had that same ability, the gift of fish and loaves. He was the founder and the author of the Tao and Taoism, but he would perform miracles wherever he would go. Lights would come from him. He was considered to be one of those light beings 600 years before the birth of Christ. And when they said, what is real, Master? What is real? He said, that is real which never changes. Now you look at yourself and you try to find and define something about yourself that meets that criteria, that meets that definition. What about you has never changed? Is it your body? Certainly not mine. I hold a hair up on the pillow in the morning. I say to my wife, honey, this is the metaphysical question. Final answer. What held it in yesterday?
We have no idea. I've had this experience several million times. Right? So the part of us that has never changed isn't even what we're aware of. It isn't even our mind. Our mind is changing all the time. The part of us that has never changed is called awareness. Awareness. Not what you're aware of, but awareness. And awareness is the unchangeable. It's the part of us that when we begin to live from there, we begin to make dramatic shifts in our consciousness and in our lives. When people ask me what my view of God is, I always say I always see God as the ocean, and I see myself as a glass. And if I take this glass and I dip it into the ocean, I say, what do I have here? What I have here is a glass of God. It's not as big, and it's not as strong, but it's still God. And just like a wave on the ocean is what the ocean is doing, we are all what God is doing.